Pre-calculus. Today we're going to cover lesson 5.2. These are your notes over verifying trig identities. So if you recall from chapter 4, we verified identities back in chapter 4, and we talked about there being a fence right here and that you guys have to stay on the left side of the fence. You can't cross over, and your work is going to go vertically down your page. You're going to do one step at a time as you transform the left side to the right side. There might be some identities where we want to start on the right side and show that it equals the left side. One of the guidelines that you want to watch is that typically you start on the side that looks the most complicated. And so to me, on number 1, the left side looks the most complicated. Sine squared minus 1 is the same as negative cosine squared x. So I took this right here out and I replaced it with negative cosine squared x using a Pythagorean identity. We know that cosine over sine is cotangent, so this one is finished. Okay, we've seen some problems for number 2 already. You've already had several problems where you had to add 2 fractions or subtract 2 fractions with a common denominator. So we're going to try that on the left side here. It does look the most complicated. So the common denominator that I'm going to use is a product of both denominators. When I look at this denominator here in pink and compare it to this denominator down here below, I see that it's missing secant x plus 1. So I'm going to multiply this fraction right here by secant x plus 1 over secant x plus 1. 1 times secant x plus 1 is secant x plus 1. In a similar way, I'm going to end up multiplying this minus 1 times secant x minus 1. Okay, so I'm going to clean that up, and my next step will be secant x plus 1 minus secant x plus 1 over, and then I'm going to distribute or FOIL out the bottom. All right, the secant x's add to 0. Secant x squared minus 1 is tangent squared x. And then all I need to do to finish it is bring that up to the top. And we got it. So our fence there continues. Again, you know you're finished when what you end with is the other side of the problem. Number 3. So when you look at that problem, again, I think you're going to agree with me that the left side looks most complicated. And the algebra teacher in me says, it looks like I should FOIL. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we have our first, outer, inner, and last. Okay. This first part, 1 minus sine squared x plus cotangent squared x, it just doesn't look like I can do much with it. So I'm going to leave that be for now. This cotangent squared x, sine squared x, I'm going to switch that all to sines and cosines. These divide out. All right. So that's what I have now. What I'm going to do is group some things together. I know that sine squared x and cosine squared x play well together, so I'm just going to kind of put those together for a second. I'm going to factor out a negative as well, just from those two. And again, we know that that addition there, sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. The 1 subtract out, and we have cotangent squared x left. All right, when you see number 4 and problems like it, it doesn't really matter which side you start on, but I will tell you that typically on these I will start on the right, and I will introduce a new fraction, and it's going to be the conjugate of that denominator. Now, why would I do that? Well, I'm going to do that because I'm looking over here at the left side of my problem, and I see that it's just secant x plus tangent x. Well, if I multiply on the right by the conjugate, I've introduced that already. Now, if I could just get these two pieces to go to 1, then I have my identity figured out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and FOIL at the bottom. And what is secant squared x minus tangent x? I believe it's 1. And so we've just taken care of our identity. All right, so using a conjugate is a good way to get you out of a bind. Okay, number 5, it looks like it's not going to let me blow it up any bigger, so I'm going to make it bigger on our paper. Okay, that's the problem we have. Now you might look at that and, you know, think, hey, I don't really know if one side's better than the other. So at this point, you're just going to have to choose. I'm going to go with the right side. And identities kind of work this way. If you start something and you don't like how it's going and you kind of get in a bind, you just have to start over and maybe attack the other side. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to get a common denominator of sine x. And that's cosine squared x. Okay, let me continue on here. This number 5 is going to take us a little bit of space. So that's cosine x over sine x. And these two make cotangent. And all I need to do then is commute them, so switch the order of multiplication, and I've got the other side. Okay, number 6, I'm just going to kind of move it down here so I have some more space. All right, so again on this one you might look at this and not realize which side to start on. I see this side as cotangent squared theta, and I believe, let's see, that identity goes cotangent squared theta plus 1 equals cosecant squared theta. So what if I took out cotangent squared theta and I put in cosecant squared theta minus 1? I'm going to factor that. So that's difference of 2 squares. Okay, let's see what that does. So now I can cancel those out. So I have cosecant theta minus 1. So that is 1 over sine theta minus 1. And I can get a common denominator by multiplying this by sine over sine. And I believe that's all it took. Again, getting good at these is just going to be a lot of trial and error and persistence on your part. You can't give up. Don't look online for help. I want you to really try this, stick it out. When you do these identities, though, you can only use, if you have that orange trig identity sheet, so that would be hours 5 and 7, you can only use the left side through what we've covered, which would not include the sum and difference formulas at the bottom of the page. You can only use those identities, you guys, that are found in lesson 5.1. So stick to those. Try everything you can possibly try. Shoot me an email if you want a hint to get started. This first assignment that you're going to have is going to be a web assignment. And for the most part, a lot of those, they're getting you started on the identity, and then you're going to fill in some blanks to help you complete the identity. So we'll see how it goes. I've never used this online format for this assignment, so we'll just check it out and see if we can do it. Thanks for being good sports. See you guys later.